The Scarpa Spin RS is an updated version slash sibling to the existing Scarpa Spin. This shoe weighs in at 10 ounces in a men's size 9 and 8.8 ounces in a women's size 7. It features a 10mm drop, a booty-like construction, as well as a Vibram luggy outsole. So with that in mind, let's get up close and personal. Let's see what this shoe's all about. Alright, so what you're going to see right off the bat is that these things are dirty, and it's been a wet and muddy season here in the Pacific Northwest, and these shoes were definitely helpful and up to the task. But let's start at the upper and then work our way around to that tread pattern. So to start off, we have a pretty complicated upper. A lot of times these days we see lots of just mesh and mesh, and that's about it. And this shoe really incorporates a lot of different components in it to give it a nice lockdown type of feel. One of those is this exoskeleton, as Scarpa calls it, and it's basically just this overlay on top of the mesh that creates a bit of a grid and some connection points so that when we lace it down, it puts a nice wrap around the arch and around the outer part, the lateral part of the shoe. And we can see that here on the medial as well as the lateral sides of the shoe, and just see that, you know, this is not a flimsy type of upper. There is mesh, keeps it lightweight, but we're getting extra weight from this laminate, and that also creates a bit of a, I don't know, of a mud guard all the way around the shoe, and where if we're kind of stepping in puddles and those sort of things, it's got to go up above, the water has to go up above the sole for it to kind of start leaking into the shoe and getting wet. As we work our way towards the back, we'll notice that that fabric changes to a complete kind of TPU overlay or skin here that runs all the way around the back and back up to the kind of halfway or medial part of the shoe here. So again, lots of material, which hopefully adds to durability, which is maybe a good thing. So you get a little weight sacrifice in there, but durability seems to be kind of an ongoing problem with uppers right now. So so far so good on this one. After about 100 miles or so, still feel like this thing's holding up pretty well. We move around to the front. We have a really solid toe bumper here on top of other laminate. So again, we're kind of getting reinforcements all the way around, and then just standard eyelets here that are connected to that TPU shell, and when we lace, they really do a nice job of kind of locking down. So I guess not standard laces, but more of this kind of loop type of eyelet versus a standard metal eyelet. So they're not going to rust or pull out or anything like that. It's all part of the upper, which again, that TPU screen really gives a lot of lockdown on the foot. Move around to the heel, and you can see that it's not a fully caged heel that we've seen with the TPU or plastic insert back there. It's collapsible, but there's definitely enough structure there that there's a good heel lock in and keeps your foot in place fairly well, especially on rugged terrain. When we move to kind of the tongue area, that's where this shoe's a little bit interesting, because there really isn't much of a tongue, and you can kind of see as I move this area around, this is all stitched in all the way down to the pretty much the bottom of the shoe, and even underneath where the sock liner sits at. And that's what really creates this sort of booty-like feel. It keeps dirt and debris from getting in there too far. The one downside I'd say is that it's so thin, it's really just kind of a piece of fabric here. So it can create a little bit of stress on the upper part of your foot if you have it tied down too tight. Luckily, with this kind of skeleton thing, that's maybe not as much of an issue. So overall, felt pretty good about that system of really that sock or booty-like fit when you slide your foot into it. It really wraps on there internally as well as with this cage on the outside. You have a lace garage here for tucking your laces away and not getting them snagged on anything. And fairly standard laces here too. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting about the Scarpa sock liner is that the dust off there, this is a bit of a, I don't know, kind of a dual density sock liner. It's actually one type of sock liner, and then they added another bit of film over the top of it. But it's a little thicker here in the back, a little more firm, retains its shape, and then it gets softer as it goes up. The other thing I'll note is that on the inside of the shoe, this bottom part where your foot or your sock liner sits is kind of a gritty type of feel. So what I found is that gritty feel plus the gritty feel of the bottom of this really keeps that sock liner lined up. And again, I think the key to this shoe is that it holds really well, and it has a nice fit on your foot, and all these components start adding up to making that happen. As we move towards the midsole, this is one of the places where the shoe differs from the standard Scarpa Spin. We actually have a dual density midsole here. So we have a little firmer type all the way through the middle, and then as we move to the bottom, we have a slightly softer type of outsole or the secondary part of the midsole here. So they're very consistent though all the way around. It's more of layers of foam versus doing something like having some sort of pronation control or something like that. Soft foam, firmer foam, and then adding to that ride. I'll still say that this foam, even as it is labeled as being softer, is still a fairly firm ride. It's not something that feels sloppy or that feels like rocks sort of squish and disappear into. It's firm, you feel it, and I'd say that's one of the things about this shoe that probably makes it unique, is that it is more of a, you know, really feeling the trail type of shoe, even though it has a more thick sole than the Scarpa Spin Standard Edition had. The RS is meant to be their ultra shoe. It's a wider platform. It's got a little bit more cushion on it. But I'd say in comparison to, let's say, the majority of trail shoes out there, this is still a pretty firm feeling shoe. So something just to keep in mind. And then I'd say probably the hallmark here of the Scarpa brand in general is kind of aggressive tread. The RS has a Vibram outsole, and I really felt like these were aggressive and toothy, and they bit really well even on some super muddy stuff. One time in particular, I was climbing a hill with a bunch of friends, and I seemed to be the only person not sliding all over the place. So even though they're not super, super deep, they're well placed, they're directional, forward lugs, backward lugs, and even some different angles here towards the back and at the toe, made for a really awesome tread pattern and grip, and something that I could really feel. In closing, there's a lot to like about this shoe. In fact, one of the things that I think is nice about it is it doesn't fit sort of the traditional mold that we're kind of seeing right now, which is squishier types of shoes with lots of padding, which I do like, but this is definitely a more kind of racy, connected to the ground type of shoe. Even with its 8mm drop, it feels low, it feels like you've got good control, and it just works really well. Of course, the downside of that is that you don't have that more super protected feel, and even with this RS version being the roomier fit, being the more padded version of the Spin series, it's still a pretty firm ride. So if that's something you like, this is a great shoe for that. If you're looking for that, I want to tap dance across a bunch of jagged rocks and really feel like foot placement and just that nimble type of feel, this has that. But this definitely isn't for the tender-footed out there. So with that said, any questions, comments, leave those below this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.